vacancy on this commission? Robin, is there a vacancy on this commission? Good evening and welcome to the June 26th meeting of the Arts, Culture, and Historic Preservation Commission. Tonight's agenda is available on the counter, along with request to speak cards. A reminder to everyone that request to speak cards should be completed and turned in to the clerk prior to the completion of any staff presentation. For those speakers wishing to speak on items not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of this commission, please write in the item number on your card. All speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Please also note that this meeting is being recorded and televised, so all speakers, in order to be recognized, must be called on by the chair and come forward to the microphone. Speaking in public may cause some individuals to be uncomfortable, so everyone is asked to be professional and respectful at all times. Tonight's Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Mrs. Judy Martinez. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll take roll. Chairperson Seals.
Present.
Vice Chairperson Hayashi.
Present.
Commissioner Clower. Here. Commissioner Lozano.
Present.
Commissioner McMichael.
Present.
Commissioner Volkar.
Present.
Alternate Commissioner Branneman. Thank you. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Presentations, item 1A, presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the Commission. The Commission is prohibited by law from discussing issues not on the agenda brought to them at this time. I don't see any requests to speak. Moving on to item 1B, Commission communications. Any communications regarding the... Okay. Item number 2, presentations. The West Sacramento Art Guild update. Guild members Judy Martinez, Patricia Callahan, and Agnes Nielsen.
You're going to turn around and sit on this. You want to go first?
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Patty Callahan. I'm the Vice President of the West Sacramento Art Guild. And this is Agnes Nielsen. She's our president. Give her a second.
Yeah.
And this is Judy Martinez, who is a new member this year. Thank you. Hey, Agnes. I don't know if it's not going to reach you. Maybe you can come this way. Let's reach over.
That podium will go a little lower, won't it? The podium, there's a...
Taller?
Yeah, just make sure I don't get you.
Oh, let's get you over here.
Plenty of time.
Actually, it's not. Nope, we're not. Take a drink. It must be as low as it's going to go right now.
Okay. I'm sorry.
No worries. We're delighted that the three of you could be here and give us an update on what is a West Sacramento institution.
Yes. Well, I found out that we were incorporated on July 11th, 1990,
and we are a varied group of artists with a wide range of talents and mediums. I'm the president. Patty is our vice president. Vona Geese is our treasurer, and membership stands about 20 right now. Some of our older members might have been familiar to some of you. Ann Bissett Clark, Betty Sosovich, Lillian McNeiliason, John Olson, Stella Kalua, Don Nichols, Jean Soweski, Bill Leake, Yvonne Majesco, and of course many others.
Yes.
We have in the past had the Alice Driver Art Scholarship Fund, and we used to get grant money from the city, also for scholarships. We haven't given any scholarships in the last, 3 to 4, 5 years maybe. We have worked with the River City High School Arts Department for many years. We've participated in the Neighbors Fair at the art shows held in this building, and we've helped display the art and provide security during the day. We have held art shows at various locations in West Sac, mainly at the library. We've had an art show currently being held at the 1075 Art Gallery in the Community Center. Members have participated in many art shows around the area. And a big fair each year is the Yolo County Fair held in Woodland. We used to have monthly art shows with sales at the Nugget. Since they stopped allowing it to groups to do that, we haven't found a place that works for us. We also held 2 shows at IKEA. We used to show monthly at the Medical Center in the old City Hall building. After 2 pieces were stolen, we stopped showing there. We have now show at the Laboo on Jefferson. A member takes a month to show off their work, and every other month we have a theme show. Some examples have been fall and celebrations and love, and all members can show their things then. And we have a growing organization in large part by Patty. I've had a year of medical problems due to emergency life-threatening surgery. She has stepped in and kept the group going full throttle. I thank her for her job well done and continuing support in the future. All of the board and members have done a great job at not letting our guild be a thing of the past. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Agnes.
I do think you brought a picture that you'd like to share. And Judy, if you could kind of hold that up, the cameraman will try to, maybe one of you could explain what that photo was too.
Do it after Patty finishes.
Okay, will you let us know when, and the cameraman will know when to zoom in on the picture.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Agnes. We do have a secretary in the back of the room here. Is Jerry Reno. I'd like to recognize him. That's okay. And thank you all for letting us come tonight and speak. Okay, a little on the nervous side. This year has been a large growth for us. When I joined the Guild, 2 years ago, it seemed to be just a very small group. And by word of mouth and people, you know how it is, you know people, and everybody brings on a new person. And so we have grown from 6 to about 18, now 19 and more that want to join us. And Laboo has been wonderful. The new owners at Laboo, Johnny and Sophia, they've been great, letting us hang our art there. We have a 3-year contract with them. So it's been a challenge, but fun. And everybody is participating in that. And we have an variety of artists that are, some have degrees, some are self-taught. And it's been really good. I really enjoy it and hope to be with a group for a long time. But anyway, so we'd like to expand in the city, and we looked into a few places like the farmers market, but we were told that it was only food that they could show, so no art. I know. So
I have to
anyway.
know something about that farmer's market.
Yeah, because they have in Davis and other areas, and there's
do.
a lot of arts out there, arts and crafts. And we have individuals that do crafting and individuals that paint and all different things. But that's the type of thing that we're looking to do, and we could use some help in maybe someone.
I think I could lobby on your behalf.
That would be great. We would really appreciate that. We can't get enough, all we want to do is paint, and that's it. Show it and paint. There's nothing more gratifying than to see somebody walk up to your artwork and just smile. Whether they purchase or not, it's not always about purchasing. It's where we're touching people with our art. And those that haven't been artists, or they are artists and they haven't used their talent in years, getting them back into it, because it really does feed your soul. And anyway, that's what we're here for. And thanks for having us. Here's Judy.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson and Commission. My name is Judy Martinez, and I'm really not a stranger in town, although I am new to the Art Guild. I've just recently joined this year. I'm a self-taught artist, and after 30 years in interior design and doing a little dabbling, showing clients what I wanted them to do in their home, that was about the extent. So when I retired, this was my bucket list, and oh my God, I haven't put my paintbrush down since. So it's really been rewarding getting to know these people in this beautiful guild. And it's just a shame that here we are, 30 years old, and this city doesn't have any art if you want to go and buy a piece of art for someone or for your home. Again, like I said, I'm no stranger. My husband served on the first city council.
I think
when we
his
did
picture's over there on
incorporate.
that wall, yeah?
And his cute little face is up
Yes.
there. And I brought you a gift tonight for your Historical Society portion of your commission. And this is a snapshot that I took personally on the first meeting of our newly incorporated city.
Nice.
And it was taken, their meeting was held in the library at River City High School. It was James Marshall, but River City High School. And there's Louisa Vessel, who was a moderator. You'll see the cameraman from Channel 10, and Bill Christoph, Ray Jones, Mike McGowan, Thelma Rogers, and my husband Fidel. So I thought you might like this for
Very
your
much. Thank you so
records.
much.
So
That's great.
you wanted me to show this somewhere? Just show it. Okay.
Turn it.
Ah,
Yep. There it is. That's awesome.
there. So, anyway, and I do want to personally thank my city friends who have supported us at the Art Guild. Cindy Tuttle, from back in the day when she was mayor, has been my friend for many, many years. Connie Leake, who went to school with my daughters and is also my goddaughter. And she, of course, is your recreation manager. And I wanted Sam Brinkheis. His father actually went to grade school in West Acres Elementary with me and was also a member of our mighty class of 61 from James Marshall High School. So I have a lot of connections in this town, and I really do value it, and I really think we need to see more arts. And I know that it's not a good time to be asking for money or any grants, as you're always dealing with budgets. But I think it's time to put that vision forward as to what we can be here. Many of us belong to the Northern California Arts Guild and the Sacramento Fine Arts Guild, and they meet in a big old warehouse in Carmichael that's provided by the City of Parks and Recreation Department. So I think there are places in this town that we could look for, and with your help that we could find some place to start showing our talents in this town. We all have to compete with our sisters Davis, who has their fabulous Davis Art Center and their Artist Collaborative Gallery, and Sacramento has Old Sac's Collaborative Gallery there, and many, many galleries all around. They have the second Saturday, and they have lots of great entertainment, and I think that's something that we should be a part of. If we can put a trolley across the river, we should be able to have a little bit of art in our town. So I look forward to hearing what you can do to help us, to connect us, and see what we can do to have a better vision for the artists in this town. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Questions regarding the Art Guild, commissioners?
No, I was just going to make a comment. So the current gallery showing is yours, right? The Art Guild. So I went over there. It's really some amazing work, and I was actually a little bit blown away by the strength of some of the work when I walked in there, because I didn't know what to expect when I walked in there. But it was really some nice work, and I'm glad that you guys were able to show it over there. And I guess one other question: if people who want to get involved with you, how do they go about? Is there an application online? Do they contact somebody?
Where and when do you meet?
Well, tonight would be our June meeting, so we will meet afterwards here. And it's, is it going to change?
Well, it's changing because we haven't been able to get the large room in the library. We keep competing with other groups. And so it's usually on... We've been having it on Mondays at 6:30.
The third Monday of each month, or the last Monday, yeah.
The last Monday of each
Yeah,
month?
yes, yeah.
And we also have Facebook,
Okay.
Art Guild Facebook page.
Hi, can you use the microphone, because the people that are looking at the camera won't be able to hear you, please? Yeah, thanks.
Okay, our meetings are the last Monday of the month. We had been meeting at the library, and we were having the last Thursdays, but because we weren't unable to get that, Monday seems to be the key time now. We have a Facebook page that has phone number, contact information. If you just go on to Facebook and look up the West Sacramento Art Guild, you'll also see some of our artwork. And then there'll be a phone number you can contact. Okay.
And is there a fee for membership?
We have an annual $20 is the
Well, that
annual.
hasn't changed since
Is the
1990.
annual fee. Yeah.
Way back before the neighbors fair, that was the fee. Yeah.
Yeah, and we ask that the members do come to the meetings as much as they possibly can, so they can be involved in our decision-making and bring in new ideas. With all the new members, we've had great feedback, new ideas, and we're just moving along, so we're really
And is the Art Guild, is it a nonprofit, is it a 501c3? Are you eligible for grants?
Yes,
Okay,
okay,
great. And,
thanks.
Anyone else?
Question.
Commissioners, questions?
Yes, the community center art gallery, that's not available to you on a regular basis? Pardon?
They're hanging there right now.
Yeah, I know, but generally?
They have a waiting list for that. You sign up. We are scheduled for next June also. And if there's any individual that wants to have a show there, you just have to contact Sam. It was Angie Pina who was handling it, who's no longer there anymore. Unfortunate. But Sam is just as good. And so if you want to have an individual show, you contact them and see what's available, and they put you on the schedule. I have a show coming up in October, which I was put on the schedule a year and a half ago, so October of this year. So,
And the community center doesn't have any meeting space that they would have for your group meeting?
We've actually,
I'm thinking that they do, but because of some of us work, so we can't be there. Yeah, and it's only like an hour that we could be in there, and we usually go over that because we're sharing ideas and coming up with new places that we're going to be showing.
Or the rec center?
Yeah.
The meeting rooms in the rec center?
certainly, and actually Judy and I have had this conversation, and we did offer the community center, but at the time you had found something else when we'd made the offer. But we are willing to host your meetings. So, Judy, as we talked about before, so.
Commissioner Clower, any questions for the? No. The, I remember when the Alice Driver scholarship was instituted, and she did amazing work. How was that funded in the past? And
There was
That's a question for you.
there was an actual fund that was set up, and then I found that there was a large withdrawal, and that ended it. And that's been quite a while ago now. So I'm not sure why, because there was no notes of saying why the money was withdrawn.
the West Sacramento Community Foundation does an annual grant to small nonprofits, and it's very likely that, as I remember, that scholarship was for art students at River City High School, wasn't it?
Yeah, and they were going on.
So it would
they had to be
seem
going on to
that
college.
might be a good resource. They've done the funding for this year, but that gives you a year to kind of get it all together, and that might be a good resource for the work that you're doing in the community, which is the intention of that foundation.
Okay.
So,
Also, the California Arts Council has grants that they give to small organizations that are 501c3.
Okay. Thank you.
thank you.
Okay.
And thank you for keeping it afloat and bringing it to thriving again. It
You
really
bet.
is really is an institution.
I'm finding artists at Michael's in the aisles.
Yeah.
And I say they're looking for paint and stuff. I go, oh, you're an artist. Oh, okay. And then they show me their stuff, and I'm like, you need to belong to our art guild. You are really good. In fact, our newest artist that joined us, he painted 130 paintings before he felt that he could be good enough to join our guild. I could not believe it. And if you went over to see the show, it was the owl. That was,
Right.
yeah, it caught your eye, right? Yeah, he's very talented, and I'm so
Wonderful.
glad he joined us.
And so hopefully when you have entries in the Yolo County Fair, and you usually have pretty good representation and some winners, send that
We do.
information to the city, and I'll bet they would be delighted to put it in city lights and talk about your meetings and celebrate your successes representing our artistic community in the county.
Yeah, there was probably 5 or 6 of us that went into the Dixon May Fair that took home a lot of ribbons.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Culver City, I know that, I see John Robinson nodding his head, but yeah, City Lights would be delighted to brag about you.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 3, Historic Preservation of Fire Station Number 1. Diane Richards, Senior Program Manager, Economic Development.
Okay, well, we'll just work with that. There's no up? Okay. Good evening, Chairperson Seals and members of the Commission. It is a pleasure to be here tonight to talk to you about the Washington Firehouse. How many of you have been in the firehouse? Okay, so, all right, well, this is the before picture, and it was a very sad picture. As many of you know, the building was built in 1940. It was a Works Progress Administration building, and it had been originally the town hall for the city of Washington, so it has a tremendous amount of history. It was a gathering place. It was the first fire station. It was the police department, and then after the police department moved out, it was vacant for 20 years. And through the efforts of the West Sacramento Historical Society, they were able to actually get it listed on the state historical registry. They fought to keep it from being demolished because for many years the city had tried to find a developer that would invest and renovate it and reuse it, and many had tried and many had failed to put the amount of money into it that it needed. So it is still here because of the efforts of the Historical Society, and it is listed on the California Register. It's a 2-story concrete and brick building. Let's see, a couple things I want to say here. So the original effort with DNS development started in July of 2014. And it began just with a simple letter of intent that said, we would like to buy this building and renovate it and turn it into another gathering place. So next slide, please. It's an example of the streamlined modern architectural style, and that is characterized by smooth surfaces and curved corners, horizontal emphasis on railings, suggesting air patterns, porthole openings, and horizontal metal railings are one of the common features. It denotes historical and architectural significance, and again, has been listed for many years on the California Registry and just has been vacant. Next slide, please. The architect is George Sellon, who was the first California state architect. He had designed many, many buildings, many public buildings, lots of schools. I have an example here of kind of the style there. The Nevada County Courthouse on the left shows the rounded features and the horizontal emphasis of the style. It's said that he trained under Frank Lloyd Wright, and he also designed San Quentin Prison and Agnew State Hospital. So he had a tremendous amount of work behind him. Next slide, please. And of course, this is the firehouse today after almost 3 years of work by DNS Development. And we chose DNS because DNS has experience with historical buildings. They did the Sheepherder Inn in Galt and other historic buildings, the Maidstone in Sacramento. So they have a passion for historic buildings, and we were really glad that they expressed interest and glad to work with them. So in July 2014, we entered into an exclusive negotiating agreement with them. They studied the building. There had been estimates of, $600,000 to, $2 million of estimates done for the renovation of the building. And in April of 2015, we entered into a contract to sell them the building and renovate it. And we had a couple of stipulations when we went to the council. One, that they would need to make sure that it had a public gathering space, that it was not, closed off to the public. And the city council rightfully ensured and said, as part of this transaction, we need for it to be, to recognize the building's history. There needs to be a public display of the history of this building, and it needs to be recognized and evident in the building. And if you've been on the ground floor, you see all the historical photos, and they did a tremendous job. DNS hired an artist who researched all the newspapers, and they have just a tremendous amount of historical photos and memories of the building and its use. One of the features of the Streamlined Modern trademark is the semicircular tower that's on the southwest corner of the building. It used to have a flag on top of it many years ago. And then the rounded truck door openings is another feature of the Streamlined Modern style, as well as the metal sash windows, which have been restored and rehabilitated. Next slide, please. So again, just a couple of trademarks of the Streamlined Modern style. The wing wall, it's hard to see in this picture, but in the very back there's actually a brick wall that sticks out perpendicular from the building, and it has a porthole in it, and that is actually a very iconic feature of the style, as well as the horizontal grille, which you see on the rounded tower structure there, and DNS has restored that and put the railing back in it. You may be wondering why there's an aluminum fence around it. The site to the south is actually a brownfield site, so there's sort of a way to fence off the ugly, if you will. So until future, there's going to be progress in that arena too. Okay, next slide. The city's role is really to facilitate and be a champion for the project, and it was not an easy project any step of the way. There were sewer lines that were not where they were supposed to be. There was a water line that was cut. Cost overruns. Every kind of urban infill project problem that you can have, we had on this project. The city council was had the foresight to know that we were going to have to partner with DNS. And so we invested in and got approved with the purchase agreement a contribution from the city for public infrastructure, which is water and sewer lines, a parking lot. So $150,000 essentially was invested with DNS to make those things happen. And as well, we had another stipulation, and that was we wanted this to be a restaurant. West Sacramento needs restaurants. We were determined to have this be a restaurant, have it be a gathering place again, just like its history. And so that was one of our criteria in the purchase agreement. So as you know, restaurants need parking, they need signage, they need a lot of critical things in order to be successful. And so the city also agreed to invest in a parking lot, a public shared parking lot around the project, which is not just for the project, but also for the neighborhood. And we also did new streetscape and landscaping and lighting in front of the building, and actually took it all the way up to the railroad tracks, if you know where that is. So really needed to beautify that whole section. And other than this brownfield that I mentioned earlier, which time will take its course there, and that will eventually be redeveloped. So. Old Mary. Old Mary was sitting in a warehouse. The West Sacramento Historical Society had invested, a lot of time and money in restoring it, and it actually runs, as I understand it. But it was sitting in a warehouse where no one could see it. And so I had this crazy idea that we've got to put this thing on display somewhere. And luckily, DNS humored me, and we were able to get an agreement with the Historical Society through the leadership of Don Schatzel and Tom Lewis to make that happen. And so Old Mary actually started inside the building behind the bar, and then, there wasn't enough room for seating and bar, so it is now on display outside where you see it. The other thing I would say is just historically, there was coordination with the State Historic Preservation Office throughout the project. There were a lot of things that could not be done. For example, they wanted to put artwork upstairs. They had beautiful art woodwork done on the walls and the flooring, and that was not deemed to be acceptable with the Department of Interior standards, and so that actually had to be removed and actually restored to its original condition. So I don't know if we can go back to the slide of, well, actually it's the next slide, I take it back. The next slide will show you. So this is what the flooring looked like when DNS bought this building. This is the second floor. And the roof had leaked for years, even though we'd tried to fix it numerous times. I don't know how they did this, but the next slide shows you now. That is the original white maple floor. That is incredible. I don't know how they did it. It's some kind of magic that DNS did. And then the same thing with the walls. So the Historic Preservation Office insisted that these plywood walls had to remain. And they're, okay, it's the Department of Interior standards, it has to remain, but they're interesting. And then the last comment that I would like to make is that DNS has now applied for the National Historic designation, and they've been going through that process for over a year now. I think they're very close, but there's a few things that they need to work out, and so this building is actually going to be on the National Historic Register, and I think that's a great accomplishment for us. Next slide, please. This would not be complete if I did not thank Steve Labacci and Bay Mary with DNS Development. They have a passion for this. Steve personally went out and looked for, wood and furnishings and things that he could use to restore this building. Paula Bogosian is the historic consultant that worked on the project with them every step of the way. She's fabulous, and is also working on the National Historic designation. And again, Don Schatzel and Tom Lewis, worked with us every step of the way to make sure that this happened, and that they didn't get in the way, but that the city's, that the building's history was honored and is featured in the building. And lastly, of course, the City Council. There was a lot of pressure to demolish the building years ago, and they stood fast, and and said, no, this is part of our history and we need to keep it. And then lastly, the two restaurant operators, Durar Zawade and Philippe Massoud of Burgers and Brew, all the furnishings that you see, and if we could go back to the slide of the upstairs, please. This is all them. I mean, they are totally, dedicated to bringing back the history, the light fixtures, the fans, even downstairs. In the downstairs, they have, these air exchanges that look like historical air exchanges. So they've really invested a lot of, money and heart and soul in making sure that this interior renovation is really true to the history of the building. So it's been a fabulous project. I have thoroughly enjoyed it, and I thank you for your interest, and hope you enjoy many outings at Burgers and Brew. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Commissioners?
I was just curious if any of this history that you mentioned is captured at the site, or is there a it's all there?
Yes, there are newspaper articles about the town, talking about the town hall, and then all the different events and gatherings that were there. There are so many photos. There's actually another display that they're working on that's in the corner by the garage windows. There's a little alcove there that they're actually working on another historical display. So they're not really done yet, but that's a good point. I would hope that would be part of it, and I'll certainly mention that to them.
I was just going to add that some of our partnering cities do a really great walking tours of just sites like this. I'm sure there's other things of interest that might be unique to do a little tour of West Sacramento. I could see our mayor on a bicycle doing a tour of some of these unique historical aspects. It would be really interesting to folks nearby.
Mm-hmm. And I know the Bridgeview Market is something that DNS also owns, and they're working on that too. So I think when we have a little more critical mass in the area, I think
Well,
that
and Devil May
definitely-
Care ice cream across the street.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they sell out every weekend.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
incredible.
See, and this has been exactly what we wanted, which is a catalyst for really revitalizing that whole corner. So it's been a great project. So
And for our residents, they have jazz on the weekends. So it's really great to have jazz back in West Side.
yes, exactly. And again, part of the history there was a gathering place. So
The floor on that second floor, having been through that building before and then way before, it's just mind-boggling. It's worth wandering through the lobby. Pick a time when they're not busy, because
And the fire pit.
but just the stuff on the walls, that old range that needed to be saved. It's incredible. It's an incredible job. Thank you so much.
thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Moving on to the consent agenda, item number 4, approval of the minutes of the September 26, 2016 regular meeting and the minutes of the March 20th, 2017 regular meeting. Commissioners, have you had a chance to review those minutes, and are there any changes, any comments?
One addition to the meetings in March, I had brought up a question about the Amtrak entry into West Sacramento and was asking questions about if that could be a project that at least I would have a lot of interest in.
So we can add that as an amendment to those minutes?
And I would move to approve the March minutes, and I can't speak to the September.
Okay.
Was there any response, I missed March, I'm sorry to say, to Chairperson Steele's request for information on whether or not maintenance funds were part of the 1%?
Can I speak? So you may recall at the last meeting, there was not a quorum of those that were present at the September meeting. And so there was a question about whether a majority of this body was needed to approve those minutes. And so we approved the minutes with with a majority of those folks that were present. However, in checking with the city clerk, what you do is you approve those minutes by those persons that were, you have a quorum, so you approve the minutes by those persons that were present and the others would abstain. But by virtue of their abstention, you still have a quorum, and then those that are present have actually approved them. So those of you who were present in September would approve the September minutes, the rest of you would abstain, and then you can do the March minutes as a separate action.
Okay, so dealing with then the minutes of the September 26, 2016 regular meeting, is there a motion to approve of those commissioners, the three of us, that sat on that board at the time?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I wasn't there.
You weren't there on the 26th?
Oh, I was there on the 26th. I'll second that.
Okay. So the moved by Commissioner Clower and seconded by Commissioner Volker. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those abstaining? Any no votes? So approved. And now moving on to the minutes of the March 20th, 2017 regular meeting. Is there, as amended by Commissioner McMichael, is there a motion?
I so move.
I'll second.
Who seconded? Great, thank you. Moved by Commissioner McMichael, seconded by Commissioner Hayashi.
Yep.
Did I get it?
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Yes, 2.
2 abstentions, Commissioner Clower, Commissioner Volker. Any no votes? Approved. Great. Whew, got through that. Moving on to the regular agenda, item number 5, presentation of the age-friendly action plan. John Robinson, Deputy City Manager.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I think before I start, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out, Diane very graciously left herself out of the credits for that project, but the Washington Firehouse beat me to a pulp when it was my responsibility to try and get that redeveloped. So I think there should be an acknowledgement of the deaf staff work that was involved there. So
It was an amazing piece.
Yeah.
It's a legacy project.
absolutely, it's beautiful. So I'm here to present the age-friendly action plan and to solicit the commission's feedback on that document. I'd like to give you some quick background on the document and the process that we've gone through to get to this point, and then I'll turn it back to the commission for your comments. It's a pretty widely recognized demographic fact that the population of older folks in the United States and other industrialized countries is going to be growing for a period of years. In the SACOG region, there's a SACOG study that predicted that in West Sacramento, the number of older people would between the year 2000 and the year 2030 is going to increase by 153%. So as a community, the city needs to make adjustments so that those folks can continue to lead productive, happy, and safe lives with their changing needs over time. So, and those needs are really the same as anybody else in society has, but the older people have different means of achieving those. And jurisdictions that don't take steps to accommodate that are really doing a disservice to their residents. So the council recognized this trend, and one of the approaches that they've taken to deal with that is to join the AARP Network of Age-Friendly Communities, which they did in 2015. And AARP Network of Age-Friendly Communities is it's a group affiliated with AARP of cities that have committed to make their communities more livable for folks that are older, and really by extension for everybody in the community. There's kind of a philosophy that if you make your city better for folks that are 80, you've improved it for people that are 8 and for everybody in between. So the council took that approach, and under that program, you're basically in a 5-year cycle. The first 2 years are spent developing a plan, which we're basically at the end of that first 2 years now. And then you have 3 years to execute that plan. And then after that point, you revisit and set new goals and kind of repeat that cycle. And as long as you continue in that process, of continuously trying to become more age-friendly, you can maintain your status in the AARP network. So to get that done, the city established an advisory committee that was co-chaired by Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson and Councilmember Sandine, and also had one representative from each of the advisory commissions. So Ian Branneman is your representative on that commission, and Commissioner Volker is your alternate. So we've had, I want to say 11 or 12 meetings of that group, and over time we've been working on this plan really with a lot of community input. So we started with AARP did a statistically valid mail survey, had 400 respondents to that, and from there we've done a number of other kinds of outreach. We did our own online survey. We did a phone survey that we advertised in a utility bill insert that had 3 languages on it. We've done 2 kind of town hall style meetings. And we've had, like I said, the age-friendly advisory committee meetings themselves, which are publicly noticed. So we figure that through that whole process, depending on the extent to which people participated in more than one survey or more than one event, we've reached out to between 400 and 700 people for input into the plan. And the result is the document that's attached to your report. We have 20 recommendations for improving the city's livability for older residents. And we really tried to kind of balance input from all the different sources. And one of the things we discovered, which may have been obvious to other people, but it was new to me, was that older people, and it depends on what age you establish, but the senior population is not one monolithic group of people with one set of opinions. So what we found was every time we'd address a different group of seniors, they had very different opinions about what was important. So we tried to really reflect that, and so you'll see in the document each of the recommendations has with it kind of the source of where we got those ideas from. So that was kind of to pull that together, because otherwise it might have seemed a little disparate. What we're really trying to do was respond to not just one big community, but a bunch of different sort of sub-interests within an age group. So in terms of the work of this commission, one of the themes that showed up throughout this work, and particularly in the AARP survey, but also in the open-ended questions that we had on the online survey and the phone survey, was a really keen interest among older folks in cultural amenities and having a place to go, see some art or see a concert or go do things. It was similar. They had similar interests in doing classes and to our credit, the city parks department does an amazing job already with the classes and the different cultural things that they make available to the seniors here, which you'll find that the things that we already do here in many cases are the things that other cities aspire to in their age-friendly plans. So we're already doing some of that, and now we're building even on top of that. But certainly the work of this commission in terms of promoting art and culture and all of those things really serve to make a richer community for older folks. And part of the rest of the plan involves getting people more mobile so they can move from place to place, doing a better job, part of which is directly on me, to communicate the amenities that we do have and make people aware of what's here, and then help transport them back and forth. So there's a lot of different recommendations, but the work of this commission is super relevant, and I look forward to all of your comments.
Thank you, John. And this report, talk about a legacy project. Harry Potter series has got nothing on this report. My goodness, that's a lot of data. Yeah, and it's well written. It makes sense when you read it. So congratulations. Thank you.
It's very ambitious and complete.
Is your mic on, Commissioner?
Sorry.
That's good.
Is it not? Yeah, I just said that it was very ambitious undertaking you're involved in. It's beautifully done.
Thank you.
Mr. Robinson, is this available at the library for seniors who want to look at the overall plan?
I don't know that. I don't know if our agenda items end up there. I can certainly make one available. I mean, it's still in draft form. We need to go to the council at the end of July for it to be kind of the official document, but the draft is very public. I'd be happy to make one available there if there's not one already.
And in terms of the computer classes at Turner, the Arthur Turner Library, being lightly attended, I think help with outreach there. I think I see in 1992, the city had city lights.
Right.
And also in the 2 newspapers, they had a column that was given gratis, which might be an opportunity to avoid the expense of a self-published newsletter and use those vehicles for that. Also, there was a very aggressive PSA campaign that went on around that time, and the Sacramento Bee at that time had a West Sac reporter that was here. And I know it's very difficult now to get press, even though we are in the region that the Sacramento Bee serves, but to get reporting that's done, so that might be a linkage for our cultural activities. And the Renaissance Society at Cal State offers classes for seniors and might be amenable to some expansion. They've been very they've been very good with outreach and have a very vigorous attendance. Also, the Hart Senior Center has many, many classes, and they're always jam-packed full. So what they're doing in outreach to seniors, I think, is a model and certainly reaches the many seniors in that area in a very effective way, it appears to me. So, but again, I was just so thrilled to see this comprehensive report, being of the age that might be impacted by the amenities that our city is looking at to help those of us aging gracefully. So I thank you for that, and this is a wonderful work that you've done on behalf of the seniors in West Sacramento. Thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioners?
I just wanted to make note, because I saw the undersampling of residents in the Brighton Broderick community, and note that you had great community partners like the Brighton Broderick Community Action Network. I know that they went out and did some sampling and survey, I believe.
They're going to be. And we tried to address that a couple of ways, because the issue he's referring to is in the AARP survey. When we looked at one of the questions was the zip code of the respondents, and when we looked at I don't remember the numbers, but when we looked at the percentage of respondents that came from the Brighton Broderick zip code relative to the percentage of those people that are in the population, they were underrepresented in our sample, and that could be due to a lot of things. Just they may have a propensity not to open their mail, or they don't like to respond to things, or whatever language issues. It could have been a lot of things, but we did, through our outreach, try to kind of address that in a number of different ways. One, we had one of our town hall meetings. We specifically scheduled, in the heart of Bright, and we had the BB-Can representatives helped us advertise that, and they were fantastic. I don't mean to be solicitous, because some of them are here, but they divided the city into grids. It was truly impressive. I wasn't even aware of some of the techniques that they did in terms of dividing the city up into grids and assigning teams to each grid to plaster flyers all over. So they advertised. We reached out really hard on that. We had translators there for that. And we're also, Public Works is working now on a survey mostly related to broadband, but they're letting me kind of piggyback some age-friendly related questions around transportation, and they're going to be going door to door in every neighborhood north of the ship channel. So we're going to get feedback relative to transportation on that. So we've made kind of a concerted effort to the extent we can to kind of offset, maybe some of the sampling bias that was in the AARP study.
In reference to the broadband, I noticed that the city of Sacramento just had a partnership with Verizon to use common lines and have free Wi-Fi in city parks and city. Is anything like that happening here?
Not yet, but there's an item on the city council's agenda for this week where there's the city's smart city efforts that coincidentally I'm also responsible for. So we are looking to kind of cross the streams there, and there is an item, again, subject to their review and approval tomorrow or this Wednesday, but there is an item in there for expanding broadband access and for doing some kind of pilot project around what you're saying, some kind of Wi-Fi mesh or making public Wi-Fi available in a targeted area that we identify. So yes, there is work like that being proposed, subject to the council's approval.
Excellent.
Thank you. I have a couple of notes. Referring back to broadband, Yolo County did an extensive broadband survey process and issued a report and had some drill down. Is there any way to use some of that information so that we're not, remember, about 18 months ago, maybe?
Yeah, I
Remember the-
hesitate to speak on behalf of other staff members. My understanding is they've reviewed that, and the pieces they're trying to fill in now are not redundant, that it's new information that they're seeking now.
And as it relates to information out to seniors and how information happens with seniors, and we would proudly state that your goal that the Commission's reflect a diversity of age has been met in the Arts, Culture, and Historic Preservation Commission. We're there. We are equally distributed, although not the way we sat. We're boy, girl, right? Yeah. Anyway, we things that create a culture, knit a community together. I'm thinking of the banner in the gateway as you come off of Jefferson, and have long felt like if there were a banner coming off of the I Street Bridge that offered the same kind of information about things that are going on, that the city puts banners up. Speaking for the old folks at the table, we read those. We read them. We slow down traffic as we're coming around that corner, and we read about the preschool open enrollment, even if we don't have preschoolers. But it also, you know, it's a thing. It's the banner at the gateway. People ask all the time, don't they, Connie? How can I get a banner on the gateway? It seems like the city owns property in the north part of town. In fact, several exits into our community that a banner program might be a fun thing that doesn't cost. People read them. And then in the trail master plan, as it talked about seniors moving through the trail, and projects like Assemble that offer little parklets. I walk the Clarksburg Trail. It's awesome. But I also see folks pushing walkers. I see folks with limited mobility, and there's nowhere to stop. You can hit the one place by the pond, and then it's a hike, you know. So just little amenities for seniors like that, just a moment, a bench that maybe could be paid for. I know we're having the dedication conversation next, but in many communities, those benches are donated by families. You know, they pay for them in honor of, in memory of, maybe a person that doesn't meet the criteria. I know that there's been conversations around how do we memorialize victims of automobile accidents in our city. You know, we don't want a city full of crosses, but maybe if it were a form of public art in the way of a bench or something that a family could contribute to remember that person, that might be a good thought. And senior housing and affordable housing for seniors is definitely a need. But I also might mention, at the risk of, and I don't mean this in a hard-hearted way, but the only housing specifically for seniors in our community right now is affordable housing. And so just as you're looking at that plan, moving forward with the master plan, we lose some of our very active, very vital seniors to Natomas because there is a heritage park up there. You could live in a senior community. To Lincoln because there's a Del Webb there, and you could live in a senior community. And so while it is true that there is a large section, there's at least a memorable section of senior community that affordable housing really needs to be created, it's also true that that is the only senior housing that we have here now. And so if you love this community and you want to move out of your great big house and you want to stay here, but maybe you want to live in a senior community, that it's not available. So that's just an observation.
And Margaret McDowell currently has a 2-year waiting list for, so that's not an option for many, even with higher incomes that would like to live there. And a little word for the State Street folks. They are landlocked. The Clarksburg Trail and the port, the lovely walking trail that goes through the port. The State Street folks would have to go on either Jefferson or across the Palmedesi. Both are terrifying prospects for seniors. So the only access to walking, which seniors are told to do, would be just within the state streets, which is very confining and limited and boring. Not that the state streets are boring, but because our city has such beautiful trees, the sidewalks are impacted by that. So it would be good to have access to the Clarksburg Trail or to the port for walking, but that's not possible unless you want to get into very high-density traffic and cars going by at great speeds, which I know I don't feel comfortable doing that.
That's a point well taken. We actually have, one of the recommendations in the plan is for, I don't remember which one, but there's going to be a chapter added to one of our planning documents around infrastructure to tell us where seniors are located and where they're trying to get, and where are the key intersections where we could maybe make some improvements, such as, Merkley at Jefferson right here is one where some of the feedback we got from the residents there was that they're afraid to cross Jefferson.
That's terrifying.
Because the signal timing is such that the little walk signal stops when they're in the middle of the road. And there were ladies that we spoke with there that were, saying they're never going to go to the library again because they got stuck in the street. So we're looking at those kinds of things.
And I don't know why that intersection is so problematic and why people think a left turn has the right of way at that intersection. But that's another, the sign's been posted.
That's a different commission.
Right. Right. No, but
I know, I get
That's
carried away.
later in the month.
The point is well taken about the importance of improving pedestrian mobility for seniors, though, and we are looking at that in the.
And it's pretty exciting to have Runaway Stage coming, and certainly the events at the Black Box Theater. And if part of the entitlements that were included in that kind of a process involved discounts for seniors, letting people know that they could. There is art here. There are plays here on a regular basis, but a discount might be nice for folks.
Are there any plans to add drinking fountains along the trail system?
One at the Assemble Park by Target.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's people here who know the answer to that, but I don't.
Great work. Any opportunity to incorporate as you move forward on the items around affordable housing that are called out, to incorporate public art in those buildings. I think in the Bridge District that the bridge housing the first unit there is beautiful. It's stunning in its architecture, but I don't know. Well, that's it. Never mind. Sorry.
I just had one further question. I was going to ask, so if the plan is implemented, which department within the city is going to be working on the recommendations? Is it multiple departments or?
Yeah, it's all the departments. I'm actually glad you brought that up because for that reason, we wanted to make it simple for the public to kind of keep us accountable, because otherwise it's just, it's hard to tell because each project is, almost all the projects are different departments and different people within those departments. So we're actually going to have a matrix that organizes all the different sub-projects chronologically, almost like a checklist. So folks will be able to look up the current date and see what's supposed to have been done by that time, along with the contact information for that department. But it's each of the individual projects is managed by that corresponding department, and then I'm going to be responsible for kind of wrangling those guys to make sure everything happens.
I do have one last question.
Sure.
I'm wondering if there's an app that already exists, and I'm thinking of TripAdvisor, but that wouldn't be really applicable here, that the city could get engaged and it could talk about activities for seniors, or, you know what I'm, right? I mean, I use them all the time when I travel. If you can figure out where to take your dog to stay overnight, then there must be an app that relates to, that maybe already exists, that a jurisdiction could go in and talk about. Does the AARP app offer that? Does AAA offer that? Is there a venue that we wouldn't have to invent and invest in, but we could get information through for those seniors that do use technology.
So you're thinking that if it's Saturday and someone's wondering what to do that evening, they could hit the senior app
Yeah.
and see what's going on in West Sacramento? Interesting. Okay, yeah, I'm not aware, but I'm sure you're right.
An app for everything else.
Yeah, I would say that doesn't need to apply just to seniors, but just
Right.
Right, which is a point really well taken in this report, that when access and availability for seniors happen, then the whole community gets more access. Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Item number 6, presentation of the public memorial dedication policy. Tracy Michael.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. I'm Tracy Michael, Business Manager for the Parks and Rec Department. This is the first time I've had an opportunity to present to you. I'm happy to be here and to share information with you on our new public memorial dedication policy for the city. Over the past few years, the Parks and Rec Department has responded to a number of requests from the public and community organizations to place memorial dedication plaques in various public and quasi-public locations. Well, we have a formal policy in place for naming of park facilities. We didn't have one for memorial dedication, so we were responding to requests on a case-by-case basis. A recent example was the Ross P. Anchor dedication plaque that was approved for installation in the Aquatic Center at our Recreation Center. And so that's a good example of kind of a quasi-public location. We worked with the city clerk and the assistant city manager to draft the policy that's included as attachment 1 in your staff report. It was recently adopted by City Council on June 14th. And while I know you have a copy of the policy in your packet, I thought I would just review some of the highlights of the policy. It includes a basic requirement that nominations provide a positive experience and/or benefit for the public. It also identifies eligible areas for memorial dedications, including areas of public facilities that could be the Civic Center, the Community Center, Rec Center, trails, parks, and on or adjacent to trees and benches within city-owned public spaces. The criteria for nominations that must be met include names that are geographic in nature, that preserve the history of West Sacramento, or that also individuals, families, or organizations that have made significant contributions to the community in a variety of ways. The policy also describes the review and approval process, which includes the Parks and Recreation Department managing the policy and applications received. They would be reviewed by the department, and if deemed suitable by our Parks and Rec Director, would go to the Parks and Recreation and Intergenerational Services Commission for consideration. If approved by that commission, then the applicant would be responsible for all costs associated with producing the memorial and in even ongoing maintenance. And we have identified kind of an in lieu fee for ongoing maintenance for a period of time. And additionally, the installation. If not approved by the commission, then the applicant would have the ability, after the review process is complete, to take it to City Council for reconsideration, and then whatever the City Council decided would be a final decision. The policy also defines ongoing maintenance responsibilities for the city, as ongoing maintenance for some of these items can be very costly depending on the nature of them. The city will maintain the dedication in the selected location unless the city determines that removal or relocation is required. In the event of a removal without relocation, the memorial plaque will be returned to the applicant. If the city wishes to no longer maintain the dedication due to higher maintenance costs, oftentimes replacement costs associated with it, then, and if that far exceeds what we originally estimated, then the applicant will be notified and have the option to reapply. And as part of the program, we will maintain a current listing of all of the dedications and their location, really kind of for saturation control, so we make sure that they're distributed appropriately throughout the city. So that's kind of an overview of the policy. We did make some slight changes to the application that's attached to the policy, just because we use the park naming application as a template, and there were some things in there that still seemed very facility naming focused, and so we made some minor adjustments to that application. But other than that, the policy was adopted by council a few weeks ago. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners?
Yes, a question. A memorial park is called Memorial Park, and it only has one memorial plaque. So I'm interested if that's a top consideration, since it is Memorial Park for benches and other.
It could be. Most of the time when we've responded to requests, the applicants have had already identified locations of interest. And so I think that might be a consideration if, say, the area of interest is saturated already, or maybe it's some of our areas are actually kind of expensive for some individuals for the plaques, because we have already identified what the plaques need to be made of, and it might be out of somebody's price range. And so that could be another option. I don't know if you have anything to add to that. But mostly we've responded to requests from the applicants based on locations of interest for them.
I have a question. These are permanent, right? Well, the reason I'm asking is because you said that they could be moved, are removed if the high maintenance price gets too high or what have you, and they could not be relocated, and they might be. So do you also do like temporary? I mean, is it all going to be permanent, or can you have somebody dedicate something for a couple of months and say, I want that down at the end of 2 months. I'm just trying to remember so-and-so for, this or that. I mean, because because they're permanent, but there's also a stipulation that they can be removed. So I'm just wondering if there's like a temporary.
We do actually have some temporary installations that are done, like the 9/11 installation that's done, and I think this policy doesn't necessarily address that specifically, because we were, as part of this policy, trying to control not only location but also installation and maintenance costs, and so for the temporary installations, I think it's just a little bit different of a process. But I don't know, maybe we could use this process as a starting point for those types. At least it helps to formalize something for our applicants, because we just didn't have anything before.
Is there a design criteria? Design standard, design?
There will be. We're working on that right now. One of the comments we got back from our Parks and Recreation Intergenerational Services Commission was that it'd be nice if we could create a couple of options for applicants. So we do have some companies that we use, and we will be coming up with some options. Now, there are certain locations where the plaque is already predetermined by the location, like on the Riverwalk. There are areas where you can insert plaques, but the size and the material has already been predefined by that location. So we will likely have a few options for individuals. Would there be opportunities to stray from the templates? There could be. They just need to be reviewed, but we wanted to try to create some consistency with the production and maintenance, really, of the plaques.
And so then appropriateness. I mean, you mentioned the Riverwalk, and I'm thinking of, there's a monument up there that for the old salmon factory that was there. There are a couple of veterans, I think, monuments up there. But so it would be along a theme, depending on where it was. I mean, like a tribute. The Riverwalk seems to have a theme going with it. It's about the history of the Washington neighborhood. And so when you talked about designated areas, I was just wondering, do you have an idea then of what might go
where?
Yes? Okay. And as you're developing the design criteria, might it be possible that some input from this commission might help from both a historical and a
Absolutely.
Always looking for potential for the interesting. It'd be nice if there was a criteria so that if people saw it, they knew, oh, look, that's the da-da-da-da.
It's true, and you could actually you might want to vary the design based on the location in the city, too.
Yes.
We haven't quite gotten that far in our process, but that's something that we should definitely take into consideration, and we can come back to this commission and share some of our initial ideas.
Great.
Thank you, Cindy Tuttle, Director of Parks and Recreation. You bring up a very good point, and in fact, part of the reason I wanted to look at a more broader scheme of design guidelines is that I was recently in Mexico City. And if any of you have ever been in Mexico City along the Proforma, there are varied and different types of benches and areas and gathering places. And some of the memorials along there are actually art pieces. Like one art piece was a bronze couch that people could actually sit on. So it was a multi-purpose. It was a bench plus an art piece. So I don't think we want to close the door on being able to have those types of creative solutions, particularly in certain areas where it's appropriate.
Exactly.
However, you're absolutely correct. There are themes created in several areas in the community based on design guidelines, like the Washington Specific Plan, the Bridge District. They have design guidelines within their specific plans that we want to adhere to. But again, we don't want to limit ourselves so that if somebody comes in, again, like with an art memorial that we think would fit into that particular landscape, that we're not
that the
limiting
big bike,
ourselves.
one of the coolest pieces of public art that you see people
The bike.
photographing themselves or kids is that great big bike, which is a memorial to, that was people, the family designed and took care of that.
Exactly.
So you wouldn't want to.
I hope that answers your question.
It does.
It's kind of like a yes/no. It's really going to depend.
Actually, yes, no is the perfect answer.
Thank you.
I have something to add to that, too. I think
Okay.
one of the reasons why we had talked about coming up with a couple of examples is that sometimes applicants aren't aware of how expensive it can be to produce some of these memorials. Park benches and plaques can actually be quite expensive. So we thought if we can at least come up with some templates to give applicants an idea of what the costs are associated with producing, installing, and providing some an in lieu fee for ongoing maintenance, that would help them to be just more aware of what to expect for this process. So I think we definitely can be creative, but at least this is a starting point to give applicants an idea of what it's going to take to get the memorial installed and maintained. So
Great. Thank you, Tracy. Are we good? Okay. Item number 7, Director's Report, 7A.
Hi, thank you again, Cindy Tuttle, Director of Parks and Recreation. Just 3 very brief items for you. The first is I'd like to introduce Robin Smith, who's our new Commission Secretary. She took Dan Anderson's place. She's been here for a little over a month, 2 months? Almost 2 months. So she's an old timer now. So I want to welcome Robin. Of course, Anna Padilla is here helping to train Robin, because this is Robin's second commission meeting. She did do the Parks Commission meeting, so welcome to Robin. The second piece I wanted to talk about is the commission had asked for a workshop. We've not had an opportunity to put that together for you yet. However, I wanted to give to you tonight, this is a staff report from the City Council meeting of June 6, 2007, when it was the adoption of the resolution of the public art strategy. And so
Right.
the public art strategy is attached to this. This is a public document. Anyone can get it online. I do have copies available for the public that is here in the audience if they'd like them as well, and we'll pass these out to you, the commissioners. So this will give you a little bit of background history. We're still trying to figure out what we're going to do about this workshop, and but now that we've gotten through the budget process at the city, we can start concentrating on that. So I will give these to the secretary, who will give them to you. And then lastly, I did want to report on the Parks and Recreations Department budget. As you know, the City Council at their last meeting did approve a balanced budget for the city, which included the Parks and Recreation Department. The budget has been fairly flat, as you may imagine, because obviously costs have increased at a greater pace than inflation, and so we're kind of creating one of these gaps. Also, what really impacted the Parks and Recreation Department was the implementation by the state of mandatory minimum wage increases. As you know, the Parks Department has a lot of seasonal workers. Right now is the height of our season. They're mostly minimum wage workers, and so those increases in salaries, even for our part-time Tier 1 workers, had a dramatic impact to both our recreation center and our community center. The good news is that the community center, particularly around programs for children, our ACES after-school programs and things like that nature, we were able to absorb those increases into Measure K because the Measure K funds were a little bit more than when we originally started those programs. However, at the West Sacramento Recreation Center, it was hit pretty hard. They had to make about $150,000 in cuts. I'm extremely proud of the staff there who worked really hard to switch from kind of line item budgeting to program-based budgeting. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with budgeting. They actually quantified every program that was offered at the recreation center, looking at it from a staffing standpoint, how many people are attending, what are they paying. So you really get to determine what programs are being utilized and what are giving you the biggest bang for your buck, so that you're making educated decisions about the cuts that you're proposing to your decision makers. And so this was a very difficult exercise for them because they're very passionate about their work at the recreation center, as you can imagine. But again, they did an excellent job in putting together this program-based budget, which really made the decisions that we presented to council much easier. So the council agreed with the recommendations from staff and the executive team. It was not an easy budget year. I'm just going to be honest. It was very difficult. There were some really difficult decisions that had to be made because you're cutting programs over here, and then with Measure E, we're creating new programs, which are very exciting around Kids Home Run and homelessness and some really exciting stuff. But, it's just balancing it all out. But we did do that. Measure E is going to go to council this week for those allocations. But other than that, we didn't lose any staffing, which I'm really proud of, that we did not have to cut any full-time employees out of the Parks and Recreation budget. So again, I attributed that to the great work of staff at all levels and all the divisions. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and it's great to see everybody.
Thank you. Questions?
Great.
Congratulations on reaching the budget.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, it takes a village. The executive team here is really excellent, and so it was everybody working together to get it done for council. So,
Great.
thanks.
Thank you. 7.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yikes. I'm sorry. I wanted to have Tracy come up, if it's okay, with the chair, to give you just a brief update on both the Heritage Oaks Park site and the Assemble Sacramento projects, because I figure you'd be interested in both of those.
Great.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you. Well, we've been working very hard over the last several months on 2 exciting projects. One that you've already talked about, the Assemble Sacramento, the NEST project. We are working with Assemble Sacramento to develop the agreement between the city and Assemble Sacramento so that we can actually accept all of these improvements that they're working on creating, and also helping to coordinate with design and ways that we can create some cost effectiveness for the group, and helping to coordinate as needed on site design and planning and coordination with the community and security and safety and a variety of items. So we're very excited about that project. We've also been working on the Heritage Oaks Park site, which is located at the corner of Lake Washington Boulevard and Village Parkway. It is a site that the city accepted as part of the Newport Meadows development. We, as a city, we accepted the property last year, and we do not have the resources to develop the park site. It's an approximately 9-acre site. It has a grove of beautiful heritage oak trees on the site.
Is that on the east or the west side of Village Parkway?
It's on the northwest corner of the intersection.
Got it.
So we were approached about a year ago from an Austrian-based ropes course company who they have a local partners in the project that live in the area, and they fell in love with the site and were very interested in leasing a portion of the site from the city to install a ropes course in the trees and offer an education component about the trees and its connection to the river. And we have been working with them, received council approval in in March they approved an exclusive negotiation agreement for us to negotiate the terms of a potential lease on the site. So to date, they've done quite a bit of work in looking at the site plan and coordinating with the city to see what type of public amenities can be developed as part of their project, so that although the city doesn't have resources to develop the park site now, we can actually have some public improvements made as part of this potential lease, so that the public can come and enjoy the site. And so right now, the ropes course, as it's currently being considered, actually is open to the public. The public could walk through the trees while the ropes course activities are taking place. You would have to pay to use the ropes course, but it's elevated.
What's a ropes course?
A ropes course is like they call it a treetop adventure course. They have them in a few locations in Northern California. In Tahoe, they have a few locations. In Santa Cruz, they have some. Sac State actually has a very, very small one. It's not necessarily really built into a natural environment, but it's an obstacle course in the trees. So you have platforms that are actually mounted up in the trees with ropes that connect the trees to each other with a variety of different obstacles that you use to travel from tree to tree. And it requires a tremendous amount of strength and coordination, but it's also very safe. You're strapped into a lot of safety lines so that you can fall and you'll be protected. But it's great for team building, for school groups, for athletes. A wide variety of individuals use these types of facilities, and they're fun. I've gone to the one in Tahoe just doing some observation for this potential project, and it's incredibly challenging and really fun. And the public can meander through the trees and watch everybody. So the public will still have access to the entire site. There will be some buildings constructed as proposed, a concessions and office reception building that will actually house restrooms that would be made available to the public, a play area for children, parking on site, and then an event/gathering space that they wanted to call the barn, but the barn was taken, so it will be the event shed. So we'll have the nest,
the barn,
and the shed, and the barn. So they're also proposing trails through the site, so this would be more of a nature park. Natural environment with trails through the property, and we're exploring grant opportunities for interpretive signage and outdoor education components to the site so that we can leverage the ropes course project and then add additional amenities for the community. So
there's a 1% budget in this project for public art? It's a city.
Yeah. For the ropes course, the particular lease, that hasn't been considered yet, but for the other amenities that we're beginning to look at as part of the grant application, that's something that we've even talked about having really a more artistic approach to any of the amenities given the nature focus of the site. You could actually create some really amazing play structures, kiosks, benches, signage, and even just standalone art in the park that is reflective of the nature of the site and the development. So it's in the very, very early stages because we haven't really launched the grant process yet. We are waiting to get some additional feedback from council on our lease negotiations. but wanted to make you aware of the project, and we would
So
definitely.
it's early enough that you could build it into it. Right.
How safe is it for the trees?
Well, that was one of our first questions. So the team has arborists that work with them. They've actually developed several courses in Austria already, and in Europe, these treetop adventure courses are very popular and have been around for a long time. And what they're finding is that the tree care associated with needing to maintain and license these facilities goes far beyond what we would be able to do as a city. So tree health and tree care is actually an item that would be part of the lease terms. They would have to have annual assessments to make sure that the health of the trees is, not at risk. But we see it almost as an opportunity to better care for the trees and to educate people on the care of trees while they're participating in the course.
Looking forward to seeing the senior access for the ropes course, could I just say?
They actually do have accessible amenities that are at ground level for people to participate on. And as the course evolves, because the applicants that we're negotiating with do see this as a phased course. Initial improvements might be fairly modest, but as the course grows in interest and generates more revenue, they can add on. And actually, they do have accessible components at some of their other facilities.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Questions?
Can I say?
nest?
Oh, God.
The nest is the,
Like the cooling station at
the nest, go ahead, Tracy. What's the nest?
Oh, yes, the Nest is a bike rest stop along the Clarksburg Branch Line Trail that also includes a drinking fountain and a public art component that really celebrates the Great American Flyway. There's also some in the drinking fountain. It's a multi-level fountain that will also accommodate dogs. There will be tables and chairs, so it will just be a place where people can rest. There will be
There's a bike repair station.
a bike repair station, and some landscaping.
Thank you.
Can I just say yes, yes, yes on the ropes course? That would be so cool.
I second that.
From the fun end of the commission? Yeah.
If you want to get some more revenue to West
Logical
Sacramento, you should
end.
definitely have a ropes course. This will bring in lots of people from outside this area, and it's great for families and great for your friends to get together, and that's a good idea. That's a really good idea.
I used to work at Peak Adventures over at Sac State, and
Oh, really?
we used to do a lot of stuff with the ropes course over there. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. 7C, future item requests. Commissioners, things you'd like to follow up on here on the agenda?
Yes, clarification. I saw the puzzled look on Ms. Tuttle's face when I talked about the Amtrak entry. And last meeting, I suggested as I ride into Amtrak, I see other communities with a real welcoming look to them as you ride through, and a lot of problematic communities, which shall go unnamed, that don't really look that welcoming. But in entering West Sacramento, there is a rather horrific warning sign posted, probably on a privately owned building, and it's a large homeless camp that one sees just before one goes over the river crosses the river into the other area. But I was very hopeful that something could be done, and I'd volunteer for cleanup, to maybe do a public art installation with the landowners' acceptance that the building could be painted. I think many landlords would welcome that, with a mural that would show the vitality and vibrancy of our culture and our city. That way, every train rider and commuter that comes through knows there's a place here that is relatively affordable and vibrant and has diversity. And maybe putting young people to work on it might be something that I would welcome. This would be a project very close to my heart, because when I see that, I just get a very sinking feeling that this does not reflect in any way what our community is or what I feel about the community. So that's my little pet project. And I don't, I'm trying to be counseled about budget and how things work, but that's something, if there could be any approach to it, even if it's down the road a bit. But
You could say, West Sac, we're the cool kids.
old
And the
people,
old people.
old people welcome here.
Two.
Any other items?
I was wondering if there was ever an
Sure.
answer that happened on the maintenance funds, whether the 1% of art funds was used for maintenance of art. Existing.
Yeah, I gave a report on that at a subsequent meeting that unfortunately I don't think you were able to attend. And I just handed out the public art strategy, and it is very clear in there that once a art project is finished, if there's any remaining funds, it can be utilized for maintenance, but its first purpose has to be to actually produce the art. And so it's very clear in there. You can read the strategy. It's attached to that staff report I gave you, but maintenance is included. However, it's not like we can carve out maintenance funding, because first and foremost is to create the art. And then, again, if there's leftover money, we can use it for maintenance, which in most cases, there's never leftover money. And if anything, we're trying to leverage the art fund and have to go get grants and do other things in order to have enough funding to actually have a viable art project. But the short answer is yes.
Great.
Do we have any money in there to do it? No.
Short answer is no.
Well, you can use it if there's money. Yeah.
Well, I was hoping my pet project could be maybe under the homeless umbrella to clear up that site and make it less.
Yeah, I'll need to get the exact location from you, because we do have, under Measure E, there is the Homeless Open Space Cleanup and Enforcement Program. It is for public and open space lands. However, we do, on occasion, as we've partnered with the, as Commissioner Seals is aware, we've partnered with the Chamber of Commerce and local businesses to clean up private sites with those owners' permission. So, and with them paying the bill for cleaning up those private sites, because it's really expensive. It runs about $10,000 on average to clean up a encampment. But it's absolutely something that we can look at and put on the list and talk to PD about, and Mark Sawyer, to see if they've made contacts at that particular site, and can go from there. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Any other items for future agendas? I have two. I'm wondering about the status of the installation of the piece on the river, the kind of shimmery installation on the river.
Oh, yeah, that.
The piece from Prague.
Yeah.
So we are still awaiting the Army Corps of Engineers approval, because we have to get an encroachment permit, because it's on the river side of the Riverwalk. And so that's Army Corps land, and you have to get an encroachment permit, and we're at the mercy of the Army Corps.
Do you think Congresswoman Matsui could help with that at all?
Oh, we've already talked to her,
You already
yes.
did. Oh, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
She-
we have
we took a
contacted
tour
her,
over
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
Okay.
Chris Sorosky's here. He's been trained. He's been to Prague. He knows how to put it together once it arrives. And so we're waiting for that Army Corps permit.
Great, thank you. And then the Art Guild. In the community center, there are, on many of the pieces that are up on the walls, maybe not necessarily in the gallery, but, randomly down the hallway, the big hallway, or is it possible that there could be a wall space set aside that the Art Guild could have a regular rotating exhibit? They could sign liability just like anyone that exhibits
in there, and maybe they could put up a little information about the Art Guild, maybe somewhere near that stairwell where you go up if you're going to the Black Box Theater. Is there, I'm just wondering, and that doesn't even have to be answered right now. It could be for future.
We definitely can take a look at it.
Yeah, we
What's
definitely
the worst thing that can happen is we can say, well, no, but
we have walls.
we'll look at it.
There's walls. Yeah. So.
And
No,
we
there's definitely
have
walls.
definitely had them put pieces up in the lounge at different times through the last few years.
Yeah, I
so-
wasn't thinking about the senior lounge as much as I was thinking the main thoroughfare there, you know, by Lanise's, that.
Central Hall.
Yeah,
that
it's,
big.
it's something we could look at, yeah.
And wouldn't cost anything. They would, I think it might be encouraging for them. And maybe they could have a permanent, you know, explanation of their organization and the history of their organization and how people could participate. And then even if it was only, you know, from me to the end of the dais, big, they could rotate work in it.
Yeah, good suggestion. I'm kind of surprised they didn't bring that up tonight. But we've certainly enjoyed the shows that we do with them. And we do not only the combined guild, but individual artists.
Yes.
And we have had pieces from them, individual artists in the building before in the past. And we'll certainly look at that and consider that.
If it could be more structured and a regular opportunity for them. You know, the Historical Society has a really lovely little nook there, and it's cool to go see the exhibit, and it might be nice for this group. It sounds like they're bringing it back, and it's kind of ebbed and flowed, so. Good.
We will certainly look at it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the suggestion.
Ms. Lake, maybe in exchange, the Art Guild, in connection with Generation Bridge, could do a demonstration project for the seniors there, which would give them some understanding of what's being displayed, the artists, the individual artists, you know, a volunteer project in exchange.
Yeah,
for
with
that
our
space.
Generation Bridge volunteers, that's a great idea. You guys have a lot of great ideas. Thank you. Thank you.
Too many ideas, not
Any
enough.
other items for future agenda? Motion to adjourn?
I so motion to adjourn.
Second?
I'll second.
So moved by Commissioner McMichael, seconded by Commissioner Volker. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? We are adjourned.